Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. We're going to be recapping a little bit of what the season has already started. So we're going to be talking about every team, how they've performed so far, our thoughts about it. So I guess we can just get started. With the first team, we have the Atlanta Hawks. Now, the Atlanta Hawks, they are currently 4-2. Some games include a close winner over the Brooklyn Nets, where we saw Trae Young play exceptionally well, where he beat a fully healthy Kyrie and KD. And there's been a lot of talk about how Trae Young has been averaging, I think, 15 free throws per game. What do you think about that?
That's crazy. It just shows you how good he is as a player. He can shoot from the outside as well as get drive to the lane and score. As well as if he doesn't score, he gets those free throws. I don't think those numbers could necessarily hold up the whole season, but it's very nice to see that he has a variety of ways of scoring.
Yeah, so when you see how they've been playing now, how do you I don't know how their ceiling necessarily will be, although they came to a strong start and they proved that they can beat the Brooklyn Nets. That has to mean they'll be a threat in the playoffs, but do you see them, for example, reaching the Eastern Conference Finals, for example?
Probably not, but I can definitely see them being a team. I mean, if they can beat the Brooklyn Nets, they can technically beat any team. Is that really going to happen in a 7-game series? I don't really think so, but it just shows that this team, they can ball, and they got some ballers there.
Yeah, I gotta agree, unfortunately, because what I really value in playoffs is experience, and this would be Trae Young's first playoffs. I mean, the previous teams he's been on these past 2-3 years, they haven't been good at all. Their defense was absolutely awful. But although they got even less defense with Gallinari and Bogdanovic, their offense should outweigh that defense heavily. So
the thing is, you can beat Brooklyn, but if you lose to Cleveland the next night, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're that consistent.
It's a little bit up and down, but on paper, although they've been missing Gallinari, their offense should be enough to beat the Knicks. But the Knicks, they have Tibbs now, and you know he's going to play his starters like 35 to 40 minutes a game now.
Yeah, that's true. It's also interesting to see for Atlanta that they have Bogdan coming off the bench right now. He started off starting the game, but now it seems like they incorporated Cam Reddish into the starting lineup instead. I'm kind of happy with that, knowing that they kind of want to develop their young guys, and that's what I mentioned in the previous podcast on how they're going to run things with their new additions. So I don't know, I'm pretty happy that they're giving the young guys a little bit more playing time and letting Bogdanovic and players like Gallinari come off the bench.
Yeah, I see that's valuable as well. Plus, even I think Bogdanovic struggled quite a bit early on as well.
Yeah, and he's been working out nicely in the bench role right now.
Hey, that works pretty well. Hey, I guess it's a win-win then. All right, next up we have the Boston Celtics. Their record is currently 3-3. So far, first impressions, I'd have to say Jaylen Brown will probably be an all-star this year, along with Jason Tatum in Kemba's absence. It's a little bit up and down, because what we currently saw with the Celtics was that if Jason nor Jaylen isn't playing, the Celtics are kind of doomed, I would say. What do you think?
Yeah, that last game versus the Pistons, you could clearly see. I don't know what the notion was with Brad, but once he took off Jaylen and Jason for those 5 minutes, we completely got wrecked. There was nothing we could do. Of course, things would change when we got Kemba back, but as of right now, none of our players really can step up and be like a scorer. But a player I've been really impressed with, and I think you'll agree with me, is Peyton Pritchard.
It has to be Peyton Pritchard.
Yeah, 26th pick, I believe, and he's just, he reminds me of Fred VanVleet. And what kind of comparison did you give him?
I kind of gave him like a miniature Marcus Smart, because he gives it all on defense, but he can also create his own shot and do those small plays that really matter.
Yeah, I think he's carved out a really nice role, and I think he's going to stay. Yeah, he'll have a role. He'll have consistent minutes every game, I think, now.
Yeah, like for Boston fans, I think you guys can agree, he's done more than most of the previous year's draft class already. I mean, he's done more in a few games than I've seen what Carson Edwards has done, unfortunately.
Yeah, for the Celtics, really, it's just staying healthy. I think if everybody's healthy, This team can definitely reach the conference finals again. It's just about seeing which players fit and which players don't. I don't think their starting lineup with Tyson Thompson really does well. I've read a stat that every time, that starting lineup with Tyson Thompson, we got outscored every game. So, I don't know. And plus, we have the trade player exception. Maybe we should look to use that. I think Ainge is still waiting to see which players he should keep and which players he should give away. So, we'll just have to see on that.
Yeah, I think personally Danny Ainge should use the trade player exception while he can this season, because I think now we should, obviously we're in win now mode, but looking at how Jalen and Jason have been playing, it's absolutely crazy how good they are for their age. So if, for example, Ainge sees a player that may struggle, that's a quality player, but he's in a really bad team, for example, let's say Blake Griffin, it won't work, but if it's a similar situation where a good player is in a bad team, he could maybe do that, maybe persuade a GM or two.
I would love to see either Harrison Barnes or Aaron Gordon, because we're kind of missing that power forward, and I don't think Tice is a full-time power forward.
Nah, he's definitely more fit as a center. Definitely. I guess next up we can go to the Brooklyn Nets. They are 3-3 right now. They're apparently the 6th seed. So, coming up off the gate with preseason, I watched Kevin Durant play. I knew immediately that he was gonna be back. I mean, when you're a scoring champion, you've probably been injured many times as you've been knocked down in the league. So there's no surprise to me that KD does what KD does, averaging over 20 points per game. But for me, it's the way that he does it. It's as if he's never changed. And him and Kyrie, it looks like they're meshing very well. But although they may drop a few games here and there because it's a new team and getting used to a new system will take some time. Plus, they lost Spencer Dinwiddie for the season. That's a big blow. But yeah, Brooklyn's exactly how I imagined them to be. Although, they're 3-3. It's only up from here, really.
Yeah, really unfortunate stuff with Dinwiddie. He didn't necessarily have the greatest start to the season. He was kind of meh regarding stats. But yeah, I mean, they still will probably start. I mean, they are starting either Timothy Luwawu or Landry Shamet at that shooting guard spot, and having Karis LeVert run with the second squad, which I think is a big plus. And we've talked about it, how he could be a candidate for Sixth Man of the Year, and it really fits his role because he doesn't have to give up shots to Kyrie and KD. You can just basically run his own offense right there.
Yeah, if this keeps going and Brooklyn doesn't get unlucky at all, we both talked about how definitely he will be a Sixth Man of the Year candidate.
Because him and Jared Allen, put in Taurean Prince, Landry Shamet, that's a good starting squad for at least, a formidable team, and that's Brooklyn's bench right there.
Yeah, that's enough to outscore probably any second unit in the league with Karis LeVert alone, probably, because he'd be a starter in every team, most likely, every other team.
Oh, and we also got your guy Jeff Green.
Oh yeah, Jeff Green, he's been also playing well, of course. Probably. I haven't paid that much attention to him, but he's probably doing
for the
well.
Minutes he has. He's been all right.
He's been good for every team that I've seen him. Not crazy numbers, but he does so many good things that I've seen him over the years. It's absolutely crazy.
For the price that the GMs pick him up for, I think it's definitely a steal.
Definitely. I guess we can go now, next team, to the Charlotte Hornets. They are currently 2-4. Guess the talk of Charlotte has been LaMelo Ball. He started off not good at all in his NBA debut. I think he scored 0 points, if I'm correct.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But what I've noticed with him when he was in Australia for a while, at least, he gets off to a very slow start, but he picks it up like crazy over time. Just given, I think that's the same thing with him in the league. He's been having a string of decent performances now, and it's only 5 games around that mark, yeah. And he's already had a decent performance where they beat the Brooklyn Nets, right? Or was it the Atlanta Hawks they beat?
I know they played Brooklyn. Oh yeah, they did beat Brooklyn, I think.
Then it was Brooklyn. They beat Brooklyn with LaMelo Ball playing very well in that game. Other notable players.
He played well in the Dallas game that came after, but that Brooklyn game, he wasn't necessarily as good, but still, it was a close game and they beat him.
I think that's a huge. I'd count that as 2 wins in my book. If you're Charlotte in this case at least. But other noticeable players, Terry Rozier, I'd say he's been up and down, but he's had some explosive performances. I think he dropped 40 points at one game.
42, and last night he dropped 35.
Damn. Well, unfortunately, he can't defend to save his life, but post on KD and he's like an explosive player on offense. That works very well.
The player I'm most disappointed with is Devontae Graham. Because he can't shoot at all. Like, he proved it last year when he shot like barely 40%, and even this year he just can't hit a shot. His minutes are going down, and right now it's looking grim for a player who was most improved player candidate last year. So it's really sad for him.
Could it maybe be a case of like a one-season wonder kind of thing? Do you think it could maybe be like a situation with, for example, Aaron Brooks, as he won most improved that 1 year, but then he wasn't the same at all after? Do you think it's a similar situation?
Maybe. I mean, Devontae Graham, he's probably he's a good player who can definitely play, but I'm looking at his stats last year when he was a candidate for most improved. He shot 38% from the field. I mean, his three-pointer was okay with 37, but other than that, every shot you take that's not a three-pointer most likely is not going in if you're Devontae Graham. So,
I mean, I guess that's how stats will be when you're probably one of the only players who has to do something on offense. You're going to have to shoot a lot of shots. But I understand that he may struggle now that LaMelo is taking shots. PJ Washington, who I'm really impressed with in this league, he's been really good as well. But I guess only time will tell and see how he'll do later on. I think he'll be fine. But although he has his struggles now, it could be up and down for him because he's going to have to get used to LaMelo now.
I mean, even Bismack Biyombo's averaging more points than him right now.
Jesus Christ.
Bismack has been good with Cody Zeller out. The place where he got drafted, he's back. And he's been pretty solid. He's right now averaging 10 points, 7 rebounds, and surprisingly, almost 3 assists.
Hey, that's not bad for Bismack Biyombo standards.
Yeah, he's really good. He's really solid right now.
Hey, I'll take that. I guess for next up, we can go to the Chicago Bulls. They are currently 2-4. In my opinion, there's nothing much to say here. Zach LaVine, he's doing okay. Kobe White, he's playing really well. I didn't expect him to play this well early on in the season because sometimes when you're a sophomore player or even a third-year player, you still have those little kinks you have to get used to. At times, you're not used to it. You're maybe a little bit out of shape because the season just started. But Kobe White's been really good. The fourth-year pick this year, Patrick Williams, I've seen a little bit. He's been okay. He's been decent. Not necessarily fourth pick material yet, but it's only been a few games. But how do you think Patrick Williams fares right now? And how do you think he'll be towards the end of the season?
He definitely has his upside. I think it was a little bit of a reach when he got drafted. But he's had his good games. But I think right now, if Chicago's still trying to see if their team is good or not to compete for the playoffs or at least get the 9th or 10th seed for the play-in tournament, I think what they should roll with is most likely Otto Porter Jr. because he had a crazy game recently, dropping 28 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists, and 3 steals, showing that he's still a baller if you give him his playing time.
Like I remember when he was in Washington. Now he had those glasses back in the day. I didn't know how he would fare, but I remember I think it was like 2 years after that I talked about that. He was starting to become an excellent 3-point shooter in the league, like really good 3-point shooter.
Yeah, he's a 3-and-D guy for you. He's shooting 43% from 3 right now, averaging almost 15 points. For a veteran, I mean, you can technically call him a veteran right now. He's been in the league for, 7 years now? And he's carved out himself a nice role.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad that he's at least staying in the league because, at least becoming a role player is hard enough when it's competitive as it is.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
next up, I guess we can go to the Cleveland Cavaliers. They've been making a little bit of noise so far. They're currently the 3 seed. They're 4-2. Colin Sexton has been tearing it up. Absolutely tearing it up in the league. He's averaging like 23 to 26 points, around that
26.
mark.
26.
Yeah, 26 points. Just a casual
not that
26. Just a casual 26. Darius Garland, he's been really decent as well for them. I don't know how much he's averaging, but I've seen him.
17. He's
I've
a
seen
monster
him
as
having.
well.
I've seen him having highlights. But if there's one player who surprised me in Kevin Love's absence, it has to be Larry Nance. Although he's not been shooting good at all, he's just getting all these crazy all-around numbers, whether it be several blocks or several steals. And for his size, he's really good at playmaking. He's getting a lot of assists per game. But when Kevin Love comes back, do you see him still having, those crazy stat lines? Of course, the obvious answer would be no. But when you're a big and you're getting those amount of assists and that bad efficiency, do you still am averaging, let's say, 2 blocks or 2 steals and a lot of assists?
If K Love comes back, probably not. But I think what Cleveland should do is still keep Larry Nance in the starting lineup, because I don't really think Kevin Love can compete. And since this is a young team, isn't really in a win now mode, so I think Kevin Love is kind of expendable here. And if I was Cleveland, I'd probably be looking for a trade already since last season. I don't know how that's going, but I mean, for Kevin, you're locked on a contract with a terrible team who's up and coming, but it's still terrible. And why not just use his last years being on a team that's at least competitive? So if I was Cleveland, the general manager, I'd probably at least trade him with a pick away, just because he's been so good to the franchise. He got them a championship as well. He was with that championship team, so at least give him some due diligence. Let him play for a different team. And regarding to Larry Nance, yeah, absolute amazing stats. You could compare those stats to like a player like Draymond Green. What I'm seeing right now is 9 points, almost 8 rebounds and 5 assists, with a whopping 3 steals per game. I know it's only been 6 games, but as you said, he's really impressed me as well.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Next up, we have the Dallas Mavericks. I'm gonna be honest. I did not expect Dallas to be the way they were. They're currently 2-3. Luka Doncic came in and had his struggles. Josh Richardson, who they traded for, he's been averaging, I think, around 13 points per game, a little bit up and down. But when you're in a new system, I understand that. But Luka, I don't know what's been like. I remember he had that one really bad game. I forgot who he played, but it looks like he struggled.
Charlotte.
Yeah, he struggled against Charlotte. But right now they're 2-3. We're seeing teams such as Utah, Houston, Sacramento above them. No, of course it will change. I mean, of course, like Dallas will pick it up. But Porzingis is not playing at the moment. How much do you think it will burden them, knowing that the Western Conference is still competitive?
All we can see right now, it's burning them very much. They're 2-3, but I know my grandpa told me, and it's probably most likely going to be sooner rather than later, that Porzingis is probably coming back tonight or really soon. So if he comes back and he doesn't have a minutes restriction, I could see Dallas Mavericks picking up really quickly. And who do you think should be, what should their starting lineup be if Porzingis is slated there instantly as well?
If Porzingis is in there instantly, so at point guard they have a mix between Jalen Brunson, I think, and they had somebody else as well. But I think they should start Luka at point. At shooting guard, I'd probably put who do they have at shooting guard again? I know they
Tim
have
Hardaway?
Yeah, they had Tim Hardaway at shooting guard. Small forward, I don't know if Josh Richardson at small forward. I'd put Dorian Finney-Smith at power forward, or Dwight Powell. You can pick or choose. Then I'd put Porzingis at center.
Yeah, I'd probably run with that as well. Right now they've been doing that lineup, and at center they've been running Dwight Powell. But I think if Porzingis is back, he'll most likely take Powell's spot in the starting lineup. Other than that, I think they have a pretty deep team with the players they have. Trey Burke, who played nice in the bubble, Jalen Brunson, Maxi Kleber as well. James Johnson has provided them some decent minutes. So I think Dallas, what were they projected, like 4th place by some kind of ESPN or some kind of rankings? They're projected 4th place.
I think they were projected around a middle. I know middle at least, like 4 to 6, maybe like at least 7. But I don't see them dropping that far down.
Yeah, I think Dallas, they can only trend upwards. Right now, Luka Doncic isn't really playing that well, but they definitely have a lot of potential moving forward.
Well, I think when you have Luka on your team, at least I can confidently say right now, it'll only go upwards. I think he'll be somewhat of a LeBron James. He'll be a LeBron James type of player in a few years, where wherever he will be, he can contend for a chip. I think he'll be there in a few years. Not now, because LeBron is still there and the league is still, there are still a few teams that have over Dallas, but I think, as I said, in a few years, he'll be a one-man army material, definitely.
That offense is hard to stop. If you look, that they were ranked number 1 on offense last year, and the way they just play, it's Luka and everybody's at the three-point line, and when they make passes, there's a lot of movement, open drives, and if somebody comes to help, you can easily kick it out for a 3. So that offense is really hard to stop.
Yeah, definitely. Next up, we have the Denver Nuggets. I'm gonna say right straight up, they're my most disappointing team so far. They're 1-4. They lost in the opening night against Sacramento. I mean, I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter. They're probably gonna win their next few games. It'll be fine. But they're 1-4. They're like so far in, it just proves how valuable Jeremy Grant has been. It proves how valuable Plumlee's been and Torrey Craig, as they've lost so much of their defense. Their defense is, I don't even want to say how bad it is. It's really bad. But like so far, they have nobody to necessarily stop like their wing players because they don't have anybody to guard them.
Yeah, I mean, those games that they played, it was against hard teams as well. If you exclude Sacramento, they lost to Sacramento twice, which was really disappointing. Other than that, they lost to the Clippers, which was kind of a blowout. They beat Houston, and a night ago they lost to Phoenix with the Chris Paul game winner. I mean, yeah, it's been a hard start to the season, but they're having now 2 games against Minnesota, so if they can win both games, that's a nice rebound for them, and they're probably back in the 8th seed at least. But what I liked from them was probably Michael Porter Jr., as he's been averaging close to 20 points on a really good three-pointer efficiency. I think it's almost 50%. So he's been a crazy player to start off the year. But what do you think of the whole situation with Will Barton and Michael Porter?
To be honest, I personally think they should start Michael Porter. I think he gives a lot more upside compared to Will Barton, knowing that he's close to 7 feet and he's shooting like he's KD. He's an excellent spot-up shooter. And what I've noticed about him in the bubble is that he has a really soft touch around the rim, and he can dunk on anybody, if he has to. I remember he dunked on Montrez in the bubble, but
oh yeah, that was nice.
With Will Barton, I think he's kind of like a Swiss Army knife kind of player. He can give you something. He'll give you at least something when he plays, But, he's a good player. Don't get me wrong, but personally, I'd rather have Michael Porter above him. But if Will Barton really wants to start, and I believe he knows it too, he's going to have to pull his weight. He's been averaging, 14 points? That's real. He's been averaging 10. I think he had 14 at one game. But if he's going to want to get the starting spot back, he's going to have to average really good numbers to take over Michael Porter. But if not, he can at least replace Gary Harris. Gary Harris, I don't know what's been going on with him at least.
Yeah, hasn't really had a decent year right now. Averaging less than 9 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist. So, I don't know. But having to play Will Barton as a shooting guard, I don't know, maybe. But what they're missing, as you said, is defense. Gary Harris is kind of a heisty defender, but I don't mean Michael Porter. He can definitely play from the bench as well. I don't really see it as an issue, because if he's a bench player, he can definitely tear up those second units with his scoring. So if you do that, they have scoring in the starting lineup as from the bench. So I don't really see it as a problem. But as you said, they definitely need to pick up their defense right now. Yeah, they need to find somebody who can defend, because we see their record.
Yeah, they're right. Yeah. I guess next up we can go to the Detroit Pistons. They are also 1-4. For me, there isn't much to say. It's sad that they got their first win against Boston, but I guess they somewhat deserved it because they torched our unit without Jalen and Jason. It just proves how much we really need them. Plus we're missing Kemba, so I guess it'll take time, for us to truly see what we're worth. But Detroit, there isn't much to say about them. I haven't seen much of Killian Hayes. Saddiq Bey has impressed me a lot. He's been really good for at least against Boston, but other games I think he's been okay. Jeremy Grant, I think he's been really solid, at least from what I see. I mean, he wants
23 points per game.
He wants more touches. He's got it. He's shooting a lot more, and I guess that's his numbers right now. But other than those two, I know they also got Plumlee. But where do you see Jeremy Grant moving forward? Do you see him averaging 23 for the rest of the season?
I think so. I think he's definitely a capable scorer. But it also depends on who else is there. If Derrick Rose gets traded, he gets even more touches. Right now, the player I'm actually the most surprised with is Josh Jackson, because he's averaging 16 points right now, and he's their starter. So I think that's been a nice resurgence for them. And the contract for what they got him, it just shows like if there are some players who have been doubted, who are still young, like Jalil, like Josh Jackson, at least give him a shot for a team that's not contending. And look, he worked out, and he's currently having a nice year. So I hope they can build off of that as well.
Yeah, and the plus side is, let's say they don't want him, and he's still averaging these decent numbers, they can at least, trade him. So he'll be valued.
Sure.
Yeah, he can definitely be a solid role player. If he keeps this up, he can be a role player for a championship team. Because when he came into the draft, he was known for his defense.
Yeah, and right now we can see his offense coming up along very nicely.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of the D'Angelo Russell situation where we had the Lakers give up on him way too early. When he was in a new situation, he didn't have pressure. Because Brandon Ingram said he didn't want to be... there was all these distractions with LA, but when he was in New Orleans, it just turned out way better. So I guess it took a little bit longer time for Josh Jackson at least. But it's glad to see that, he's starting off positive in the season.
Yeah.
Next up, we have the Golden State Warriors. They are right above the Denver Nuggets here. They are currently 2-3. Other than Steph Curry and James Wiseman, he's impressed me a lot during this season. There isn't much to look forward to. They're currently missing Draymond. They lost Marquise Chris recently. I really want to figure out what's going on with Kelly Oubre. He can't shoot to save his life at the moment, and they've also got Andrew Wiggins, and you know what you're getting from Andrew Wiggins. A lot of shots, not making the most of them, but he still gets a lot of points per game. But with Golden State, I'm a little bit perplexed with Golden State because I'm like, okay, if on paper, right, if this team does what it's supposed to do, they'll reach the play-in tournament, and they'll maybe reach the playoffs because of Stephen Curry and how good he is, and Draymond comes back and he's healthy again. But right now, with how everything's going, I'm not 100% sure they'll reach for the playoffs at all, knowing how there's a team who we'll talk about later, who I could see overtake them definitely. But how do you see Golden State? Because Stephen Curry, he's been really good this season. Of course, it's Stephen Curry, but how do you see the supporting cast? How do you see their ceiling?
Yeah, they are a little bit underwhelming right now. Supporting cast, you mean Wiggins and Oubre or the bench?
I guess both.
Yeah, Wiggins, he definitely had a good year with the Timberwolves last year, and then he got traded, but I don't know. He kind of feels lost in the Warriors system. So I don't know. I can't really comment on that because he hasn't looked that good. Draymond Green, he's been coming, he came back last game. Still not enough sample size to comment on him. But I think the funny fact is Kelly Oubre. I definitely know he's going to come back and reach his full potential because right now he's been absolutely atrocious. And a fun fact, The Warriors are spending $82.4 million in luxury tax for Kelly Oubre.
Yeah, I read that today as well.
And he's averaging 8.2 points on 27% from the field and 4% from three. My God.
Yeah, I mean, 4%.
4%. That's like Bismack Biyombo numbers. You see him shoot that three-pointer?
Oh my god, yeah, and the commentator went absolutely
oh my God.
crazy. He went absolutely, yeah. I'm also gonna say the court. I do not like their court as well. It's an eyesore in my opinion. It's crazy, but
The Warriors?
no, the Hornets.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I guess we can move on to next team, the Houston Rockets. It puts a very big smile to my face after 2 years looking at John Wall playing like he's never left. Similar to KD, I'm looking at him play and it looks like he's never lost his step. He's just as explosive as he was, and he said, I think he said recently, he's like the best shot blocking guard in the league. And I'm looking at, previous years, and I'm like, yeah, he's an excellent shot blocker. And, look, like, do you think him and Christian Wood could be enough for James Harden to stay? Potentially. Because if James Harden looks at his team right now, okay, he has Aaron Gordon coming off the bench, Christian Wood, who in my opinion is the most improved player this year so far, John Wall, resurgence coming back as well. Plus they have, I'd say they have an okay cast around that as well. They got Danuel House, who's okay, but other than that, I have no idea who they have.
PJ DeMarcus.
Yeah, Demarcus Cousins as well. We don't know how he'll be as well. I think personally that should be enough to make James Harden stay, but we don't know yet. Maybe if he gets traded to, let's say, there's heavily rumored about him going to Miami, but right now, how do you see Houston becoming if James Harden stays?
I think Christian Wood is definitely feeding off of John Wall and Harden. I think he's definitely going to reach his full potential if he plays with them both. He's just been a monster right now, and I think Harden is most likely pleased with how he's playing. John Wall, he's only played 2 games, but he's averaging 25 points, 5 rebounds, and almost 8 assists, with 2 steals and 1.5 blocks. I mean, that's crazy. The player I kind of wanted to see a little bit more is DeMarcus Cousins, but he's so far averaged only 13 minutes, and that's, I guess, fair because Christian Wood has just been tearing it up. But it's nice to have at least, a player like him, kind of a low-risk, high potential in DeMarcus Cousins coming off the bench. They still got PJ. They still got some shooters like Eric Gordon, Daniel House, and Ben McLemore, as well as a guy like Jae'Sean Tate, who's a rookie, and he started in the preseason, and he's been really solid for them thus far.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely. I want to see a lot more of DeMarcus Cousins. However, I do not blame Houston for playing him 13 minutes because he's been very injury prone as of late, and maybe they'll try and ease him back to the system. Definitely, but I definitely want to see Houston's ceiling here because they have John Wall now, who is an excellent playmaker, and Christian Wood, who is an excellent pick and roll man. I think he was like one of the best last season.
But in terms of if Harden is leaving or not, or if he wanted to leave, as a fantasy owner, I'd rather have him stay. But I don't know. The situation with him is kind of blurred right now, with all the going to the strip clubs and everything and getting a suspension. Right now, it's just too early to tell. But after their first win against Sacramento, James Harden dapped up Jae'Sean Tate, who he had problems in training, as we saw him throwing the ball at him. Or at least we heard some sources, right? So at least there's no beef right there, and I'm hoping James Harden gets his issues resolved, and maybe we can see a full season with him in Houston.
Yeah, I think Houston at least deserves that for what Harden's done for them. At least one more season will you try and be competitive, if he ever decides to. The Indiana Pacers, they're next up. They are currently
4-2.
Yeah, they're 4. I just found it. They're currently 4-2. Domantas Sabonis has been absolutely crazy this year, and so far Miles Turner. How many blocks has he been averaging? Like, how many? It was like 4 or 7, something around that mark.
Four blocks, but he's had games where he's had 8 blocks. So he's definitely very high value right now.
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy right now. And knowing that he was in trade rumors all of last season with the Celtics, I guess that probably fueled him a lot because he's been really solid this season. Aaron Holiday and Victor Oladipo, they've been great as well. I know Victor's been solid. Aaron Holiday, I'm expecting him to take a little jump next season because there's always something with the Holidays that they're going to be able to excel at least something in the league. But like, so far, they're 4-2. I have no idea where they're heading at the moment with the season. I have no idea which seed they'll be at. I have no idea what their future looks like. But how do you think they'll fare in the playoffs at the moment?
Yeah, so I think last podcast I said something like they have a lot of good role players, or not. They don't have like a big star. But I think I should take my words back because the players they have, I think they're all of them combined together. They kind of are the star. We see Malcolm Brogdon averaging 22 points. Domas is averaging 21, and he's basically played like his dad with all the passing and everything. He's been a really good player. Oladipo is also averaging 20. TJ Warren averaging 16, but he's been injured, so we have Aaron Holiday starting right now. But their team, they're really solid, they're really deep. Anybody can go off at any given night. And even with Miles Turner, this year providing that he can block a lot of shots, he's a very valuable player. And we've even seen Doug McDermott stepping up and averaging 12 points. Is that going to keep up? I don't know, but their start to the season has been really surprising for me. And I'm just hoping for 1 year that they reach their full potential and get a good playoff run, because last year's they haven't really had that. They missed Domas Sabonis last year in the playoffs.
Yeah, they got swept. I think they got swept.
And I think the best year was when, at least for the Oladipo era, when they went to Game 7 against LeBron. So I'm really hoping that they can maybe get out of the drought and get to the second round at least. And I think the way that they've been playing right now, I can see that being completely possible.
Yeah, I think for some reason it's do or die for a few players in Indiana because they've had these shortcomings in the playoffs. I think with the playoffs that's going to happen this season, I guess we'll see where Indiana will be heading. I think that's what they'll probably do.
And it's Oladipo's last year as well.
Yeah, so I guess we'll only see. Next up, we have the Los Angeles Clippers. They are currently 4-2. All I know for sure is Paul George has been having a little bit of up and down. I haven't been I have not been watching the Clippers. I'm going to be honest. I haven't been watching a lot, but other than they're 4-2, Paul George has had a little bit of ups and downs. I think Kawhi Leonard's been just as solid as he always is. Other than that, have you noticed anything with the Clippers? Because I haven't paid attention to them a lot at all.
I've watched 2 games. We watched the Christmas game where they slaughtered Denver. And the other game was a little bit sadder because they lost to Dallas. I think it was like a 50-point blowout.
Oh, Jesus.
It was really bad to see, but yeah, that's what we saw. Nobody was hitting their shots. Paul George and Ibaka were beefing. They couldn't find anybody. Air balls everywhere. It was a bad game. But other than that, they're still missing Morris. Kawhi Leonard is back after his injury, where Ibaka hit him, and now he has a mask. So we're seeing a mask Kawhi. But Paul George has been decent as of now. Ibaka and Zubac. Who do you think should start in the long run? Because right now I'm seeing a lot of Ibaka and no Zubac, but I think if it was me, I'd probably go the other way around.
Yeah, I think they're probably going to do the similar thing when they did with Montrez last year. Let Zubac start, but let Ibaka get the majority of the minutes. In my opinion, Ibaka fits more for their system than what Trez did, because what I noticed last season is that they needed a little bit more floor spacing. They didn't have enough, so at least Ibaka can shoot the 3 ball where Trez can't. Trez is a little bit more of a hypey player, I guess you can say. If it goes well, he'll play really well, but sometimes he just doesn't when it's all mellowed down because he can't necessarily shoot that as well as Ibaka.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm glad they signed Ibaka. He's, a fresh face compared to what they had with Montrez. But, yeah, I think Ibaka should get the majority of the minutes over Zubac. However, Zubac is a quality center in the league.
What do you think of Batum? He's also having a nice resurgence starting for them, averaging 8, 5, and 8, 7, and 3. A very solid stat line overall.
Hey, I'd say that's solid. He's very old, and he did absolutely nothing in Charlotte with that huge contract that he have, as everybody knows. But I think he could keep up around those numbers. That's solid numbers for at least what he's projected to be. But once Kawhi comes back and they're gonna have to clamp up again, I don't see him averaging as much. But if he can at least contribute something, let's say a couple points, a couple rebounds, maybe a steal or a block here and there, maybe an assist here and there, I'll take that. I think that's solid, knowing that Batum gives valuable experience to the league.
Yeah, I also think if Morris was there, Batum probably wouldn't start. But yeah, as of right now, Batum's starting, and I think once Morris comes back, his role is going to get kind of dropped a little bit. He's going to be more of a role player, or he's still a role player right now, but he's not going to have as much minutes. So yeah, I see Morris coming back and helping them, at least on the offensive end. And well, right now, I haven't really seen the best from Clippers, but of course, it's just the start of the season, so yeah. Hopefully they pick up.
All right, next up, we have the other Lakers team. Of course, we have the Lakers. They are currently 4-2. LeBron James has not slowed down at all. But I think so far what we can see, he's going to take a little backseat to AD. I think he officially said, AD, this is going to be your team now. I'll let you take most of the shots. But LeBron is still proving that he's LeBron, and he'll average like 23, 8, and 7 still. So that's absolutely absurd. He's still chasing Michael Jordan in the GOAT conversation. But other than that, I've been really impressed with Dennis Schroeder. It's Dennis Schroeder, of course, so you know what you're getting from him. Montrez has been solid as well. I know Kuzma's been okay as well. I don't know how much he's averaging, but I've heard that he's been doing okay. But other than that, I think we're going to see a lot more of Taylor Horton-Tucker. He was very impressive during preseason, and we saw him a little bit during the playoffs last season. But with this season, I can definitely see how he's carved. As you said with Peyton Pritchard, he's carved a role for himself, definitely. He'll be a solid rotational piece, and he'll provide points if the Lakers ever get in a slump, or if they need somebody to, keep, for example, 3 minutes in the end of a quarter. They can put in Taylor and Tucker, and maybe keep the balance a little bit. At least for that portion.
Oh yeah, he has got super long arms, so his defense is absolutely insane. At least the potential of it. What we see right now, 4-2. I mean, for the Lakers, they're in cruise mode. I at least know LeBron is in cruise mode. They call him LaCruz James. Regular season isn't really it for him. He's literally just cruising until the playoffs. So we're seeing his numbers a little bit down at the moment. Only 24 points. 7 rebounds and 7 assists, and I say only because we know what we can expect for him come playoff time. But yeah, as you said, Dennis Schroeder, his combo pairing with Anthony Davis has been absolutely insane. I've seen they run like one play, and every time, I mean, they do different versions of it, but every time it's just a bucket, and there's nothing you can do about it. Their team is super deep. Yeah, Caruso's out for now, so that means more playing time for Taylor. Marc Gasol starting as center. I think they're doing what the Clippers are supposed to do, starting a center like Gasol and then having Harrell come off the bench. And they got players like Wes Matthews and Caldwell Pope, so they got some shooters and defense. So yeah, really good team, and I think obviously they're most likely going to make at least the conference finals, if not repeat again this year.
They're not. I gotta say they're going to repeat this year, and in my opinion, it's not that it's not even close, but I think everybody knows they're going to repeat, because what surprised me is that they got better. They got they got way better. They got 2 6 men of the year. They got the 6 men of the year plus a candidate.
Who should have won?
Dennis Schroeder should have won, in my opinion. Knowing how voter bias actually is. It's the Clippers were somewhat hated last season, so I'm like, okay, maybe. But I think Dennis Schroeder should have won, knowing also how OKC they made that run with that 0.8 2% chance of reaching the playoffs. But yeah, Dennis Schroeder. But I'm not mad at Trez winning it. Personally, I think either or it'd be fine. But yeah, knowing that they have two candidates for Sixth Man of the Year on the same team, with LeBron and AD, with Gasol, with Wes Matthews, I think it's destined for a repeat.
All right.
Next up, we have the Memphis Grizzlies. I think for now they are going to be one of the worst teams in the league. They are currently 2-3, and they lost Ja for quite a while. Although they have a solid bright spot in Kyle Anderson. He's been absolutely amazing for them. And you know a little bit more than that than me because you have him in fantasy. But yeah, I expected D'Anthony Melton to play, but I think he was out due to another reason for that. I'm not 100% sure. But I don't think there's much to talk about with Memphis. They lost against the Celtics by a lot. They've been losing a little bit more, I suppose. But no, they beat Charlotte. My bad. They beat Charlotte. But I think Jaren Jackson Jr. is still out, and they currently have Valanciunas, who's doing solid numbers as well. But I want to ask, where do you see Memphis going from here? But I think it's obvious. I think they're going to go a little bit of a slump because they're going to have to function without Ja and without Jaren Jackson for a while, where they're two main centerpiece focal points of the team.
Yeah, so Ja's out for like 3 to 5 weeks, so that's a little bit tough. I don't know the timeline for Jaren Jackson, but another player we haven't really heard of is Justice Winslow, who I think, at least if Kyle Anderson wasn't playing so good, could have been their starting small forward because of the way he played with Miami. But I mean, that guy just reminds me of Marvin Bagley. He just cannot stay healthy right now. But yeah, they beat Brooklyn in overtime. It seems like every team beats Brooklyn, but they supposedly lose to teams like San Antonio or Atlanta. Like, the consistency isn't there, and even now, without Ja, it's going to be some tough weeks. But I'm hoping that at least they stay relevant enough that when Ja comes back, they can maybe make a push for the play-in tournament.
Yeah. Personally, I think the play-in tournament has been an excellent addition. It gives, a little breathe of fresh air and competitiveness for, the playoffs, because it gives, like remember there was a lot of problems with, how the Eastern Conference teams have this record, but there's some excellent Western Conference teams who didn't make the playoffs. So I guess this is a great solution for, competitiveness, and it gives, it gives teams a fair chance at least. 8 seed teams may not like it as much as, 10th seed, for example, but I think it's at least deserving for the teams that should compete as well.
I don't really think it, takes away the problem that a team like Charlotte could get in, but a team like Houston couldn't. I mean, there's definitely still a lot of more firepower in the Western Conference, but it just gives more opportunities for other teams to get in. And I think those games are definitely fun, as we saw Portland versus Memphis, that playing game. And we also had the last season game against, Denver versus Minnesota, like 2 years ago, when it was the last game of the season, and whoever won would get the 8th seed in the playoffs. So those type of games, they just give you more, at least more viewers, and I mean, a lot of people are watching it. It's a high intensity game. Basically, whoever wins gets further. So it's basically like a playoff environment. And I think, we have yet to see how it goes for a full season, but I think it's definitely going to be very interesting to watch those games.
100%, and knowing how almost every team has improved during this offseason, I'll definitely see how, them be able to at least try and increase their viewers, because it's been down. It's been very down, especially during the playoffs. I guess next up we have the Miami Heat. They're currently 2-3. I think, as you'd expect with a team like Miami, they're sometimes really good, but sometimes they're really bad. They destroyed and got destroyed by Milwaukee 2 separate games. Jimmy Butler had 2 points during one of the games. That's not acceptable for at least Jimmy Butler standards, as he used to wake up early, stuff like that. But I won't be extra tough on him because I think if Paul George had that stat line, people would be all over him. But because it's Jimmy Butler and how loved he is, he gets somewhat of a pass. But it's inexcusable getting 2 points, at least against a team like that. But it's early in the season. You're going to get your ups and downs. But, yeah, I think they'll definitely bounce back from that game. Goran Dragic, I don't know what Goran Dragic has done, but I think he's solid as always, as usual.
15 points off the bench. That's really good.
Yeah, 15. Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson, they're their usual selves. They're doing great things for Miami as well. And Bam, he's been solid as well. He's been doing what he's expected to do. But do you think Miami will go to the NBA Finals again with the current lineup that they have, replacing Derrick Jones Jr. and Jay Crowder with Avery Bradley and Mar Harkless? Yeah. Do you think they'll reach the finals?
No, not really. I mean, their team is still good, and I have a feeling that they could beat anybody if they're in their mode. But it's not the bubble anymore. You do have to travel to other teams' arenas, which is kind of at least a little bit of a disadvantage. And with the way they've been playing right now, I don't really see it. I am kind of biased, but I think that run that they had was kind of a fluke. Everything went right for them. And I also do think that Jay Crowder meant a lot for that team, so he's going to be missed a lot. But I'm excited to be proved wrong, and I'm excited to see if Miami can prove me wrong and get far in the playoffs again, because right now I just don't believe them.
Yeah, I understand that reasoning. I also believe they're going to miss Jay Crowder, and especially, and I'm saying especially Derrick Jones Jr. I think they're going to really miss him a lot when push comes to shove, and you're going to see maybe what a few problems may happen with Miami. I think they're going to miss Derrick Jones Jr. and his athletic plays and all his blocks. Athletic blocks, athletic dunks, all these plays all hype the team up. I think they're going to miss that a lot, personally.
Yeah.
Next up, we have the Miami Bucks. They're currently
Milwaukee, right?
Milwaukee Bucks. Yeah, Milwaukee. Yeah. They're currently 3-3. I did not expect them to be 3-3, knowing how they've been bounced out of the second round twice now. And Giannis still can't shoot. I want him to ease into shooting, but watching him airball a free throw, watching him not shoot well, it's very concerning. Very concerning, because now the teams have been able to figure you out for 2 years now in the playoffs, and they give you a solid game plan for at least 4 games. It's worrying, because now that people see what Miami did, teams will emulate that, and that's going to force him to kick out. And when you had players such as Eric Bledsoe last year, that's not going to cut it. So they got Jrue Holiday, who I really like in this league, and I think he has the potential to propel them, because Jrue Holiday is one of the best defenders in the league. He can create shots, and he's a really excellent playmaker for them. Although his numbers aren't wow amazing, they're okay. But it's been only a few games of the season. He's trying to get used to a new system. I'm not going to blame him for that. But I think his numbers will go more upwards when it will truly matter. But do you think Milwaukee has enough to beat, in my opinion, the team out of the East, which is Brooklyn?
Right now, since they're missing Dinwiddie, I think those teams are kind of in the same level. I'd put them in the A tier, and then, teams like the Celtics, the Sixers, I'd put them in the tier below. And I definitely think Milwaukee still has a chance. But what we've seen right now, you beat Miami by so many points. Of course, you are supposed to see a retaliation, but you lose by 11. And then you lose to New York by 20, with Giannis playing 32 minutes there. So what is happening right there? If you look at the minutes played by the players, I think Budenholzer is still doing his own thing with having his starters play only a little bit over 30 minutes. Jrue Holiday isn't even averaging 30 minutes. He's averaging 50.5 points per game. You'd kind of expect a little bit more, but he is averaging 40% from 3, so that's good since you need shooters around Giannis. I think they're still missing a piece or two by the seams of it. What do you think?
I mean, I think they tried to, maybe clear the wound a little bit by getting DJ Augustine and Bobby Portis. But I'm not 100% sure if that's enough. I think they should maybe get a little bit more of a two-way player to maybe help the bench unit, because what the bench unit isn't doing, their bench unit isn't much, I suppose.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
At least a bright side to all of this with Drew Holiday is Dante DiVincenzo. He's absolutely solid for them. He's amazing for Milwaukee right now. I think he's averaging 16, and he's playing solid defense and getting good enough rebounds and assists and steals as well. So yeah, I'll definitely want to see what Dante will do in the playoffs. But yeah, other than Dante being good, Giannis struggling with shooting, Drew Holiday's solid, and Chris Middleton has been up and down. I think Milwaukee is just going to stay the same. Because, as you said, with Mike Budenholzer and him playing his starters not a lot of minutes, which is a big contrast to Tom Thibodeau, it's worrying because when you're going to have to rely on your starters a lot more than your bench unit, unless if it's foul trouble. You're going to have to play your starters 35, 40 minutes a game in the playoffs when it truly matters.
Yeah, so you at least need to get used to it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, because in my opinion, if Budenholzer doesn't change that, I think he's going to get fired. I think at least fire Budenholzer if he doesn't change at least a game plan or two, which was a glaring issue in the playoffs.
If they get bounced again, I could maybe see him going on the hot seat, but I think in the regular season, he's too good of a coach. He's had 2 amazing seasons in the regular season for him to get bounced like that, but I guess another disappointing playoff run could be it for him.
Yeah, I mean, people really put a huge emphasis on the playoffs, and I don't blame them. I do as well. So I guess that's how it works at least. Next up, we have the Minnesota Timberwolves. They are currently 2-3. I saw this one stat where they're better with D'Lo on the bench compared to when he's on the floor. It's a little bit saddening to see because I love D'Angelo Russell. He's a great player. He's a great player. I like his jump shot a lot. I like that he gets a lot of arc at times with his jumper, but I won't excuse that the fact that for some reason they're better with him on the bench than on the floor. I feel really bad for Karl-Anthony Towns with everything he's been going through. He's had that issue with family and COVID. But he's been playing solid, and other than that, they haven't done necessarily as much during the off season. I don't see them making the playoffs. I see them, just keeping the young core, trying to keep Karl-Anthony Towns, trying to keep D'Lo, and moving on from there. I don't think there's much to talk about here, personally.
I mean, talking about Towns, he's currently injured with the wrist problem that he had last year. So that's kind of a glaring issue, and Naz Reid is taking his place. But I mean, for them, Anthony Edwards is coming off the bench. He's been averaging 15 points, so at least solid. He's solid right there. Malik Beasley, outside of Towns, he is the leading scorer for them. And D'Lo hasn't really had that much of a success, averaging only 16.5. I mean, for Minnesota, I think this should be another development year, seeing which players are good, which players aren't. They still have Ricky Rubio coming off the bench. They have good players like Okc, Culver, even Vanderbilt, who was a really good player in college, but he got injured and he kind of slipped in the draft, so he wound up for Denver, and now he got traded to Minnesota. He's had decent past 3 games, mainly playing in garbage time, but at least you can see him averaging 6 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, and a block. For a player like that, at least you should give him a chance, right? More than Juancho Hernan-Gomez or Jake Layman, who's starting for them, which is absolutely mind-boggling for me.
Yeah, I think they should knowing how the direction is going, at least start the youth. I 100% agree with you on that department, because you can't go wrong playing a young guy who will at least give you some sort of energy. But yeah, start Jared Vanderbilt. 100% agree with you there.
Yeah, I liked him in college, so I was really high on him.
Definitely. Next up, we have the New Orleans Pelicans. They are currently 4-2. It says here that they're the 2nd seed, but they're 2 through 4 with the Lakers and the Clippers. to be honest, I'm really surprised with them. Zion's been solid, Brandon Ingram's been solid, and Lonzo Ball, he's been a little bit up and down, but it's mostly the upside. He's averaging 12, 4.5, 4.5, and a steal and a half per game, and almost a block per game. Early on in the season, I thought he was going to be a candidate for most improved player, but it's clear that he's been a little bit up and down, but it's been mostly up. I think he'll definitely be a part of what New Orleans is trying to do, although they didn't extend him. I think he'll prove himself, and I hope, honestly, he gets back, because you can never go wrong with a solid playmaking point guard. Like, you can never go wrong. He'll get his assists, he'll get his rebounds, and at times he'll get his points. I'm glad that he's improved his three-point shot, but what was concerning for me during the season, during a few games, that he would take a shot and it'd be his old, somewhat of his old jump shot. It'd be that thing where he puts, he sways the ball, and he hit maybe just backboard. It's very worrying. But I think just because the season just started, maybe a few nerves here and there, I think he'll be fine. But I think New Orleans is one of those wild card teams. They could reach the playoffs and they'll create a lot of problems. But where do you if they reach the playoffs, right? Do you see them potentially upsetting a team?
Not really. I think I haven't really been that impressed with them as you have. I mean, I kind of expected more from Zion, but he's been having some foul trouble a couple games. He's not even averaging 20 points. I think Brandon Ingram is the face of that team currently, as he's a very good playmaker. He's actually leading the team in assists, even more than Lonzo Ball, which is, in my opinion, very interesting. And, Eric Bledsoe hasn't really been doing enough, but I think Josh Hart has picked up a little bit of his slack. I think he is one of the best rebounding shooting guards in the league, especially for a role player like him. He's averaging 8 rebounds per game for a guy coming off the bench as a shooting guard. I think that's crazy. But yeah, I think New Orleans, they definitely have to pick up the slack. If they do go to the playoffs, I do not think they could beat anybody as of right now. But yeah, I was gonna ask you a question about Lonzo Ball. Do you think? Well, obviously, I think New Orleans is most likely planning on re-signing him. But what kind of contract do you think they should give him if they're gonna give it?
I don't think they should. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure, because with Lonzo, it's either or. I think maybe, let's say around 3 years, maybe between the 30 and 50 million range for a couple of years. I think that's good enough, knowing that he still has solid upside with his game.
I don't think he'll take that. He'll definitely want more. But it's an interesting situation with him, because if you overpay him and he doesn't really bring you what you want, it could be a little. It kind of hurts, because they're a small market team, which currently has a lot of good players. So if you overpay somebody by a lot, that kind of hinders your chances of attracting another player. That's what I'm worried about with Alonso.
Yeah, and that I think that's one of the reasons I said maybe 30 to 50. So you don't overpay him, but make sure you have enough to improve other spots of the team as well.
Yeah, because he's currently, even though he's improving his shooting, he's currently still shooting 30% from 3 and 55% free throws. So I mean, unless his free throw percentage goes up, I can definitely see why the 3-pointer isn't really there. He definitely needs to improve in those categories if he wants to have a bigger contract. And right now, as of currently, we haven't seen that.
No, but it's only a few games of the season, and last season, I'm glad we saw some improvement in Lonzo's game. But I think now he's going to have to, step it up even more. I want to see him average over 15, 5 and 5. I want to see him average that. At least for him to stay. At least enough for him to stay.
Yeah.
Next up, we have the New York Knicks. And I got to give them respect. They're at least trying to establish a winning culture by playing their starters a lot, compared to Mike Budenholzer by signing Tom Thibodeau. I've seen that Julius Randle is playing almost 40 minutes per game, and he's averaging he's got a triple-double here and there. He's been popping off for a few games as well. Although last game he was absolutely awful. He didn't shoot the ball well at all. But yeah, the Knicks, they're currently 3-3. I'm surprised that they're 3-3, to be honest with you, knowing that they barely made any changes at all. But yeah, to be honest, I'm really excited with Emmanuel Quickley. I think he'll be a solid player in the league personally. Re-signing Alfred Payton has been, to be honest, he's been not bad. He hasn't been that bad. And RJ Barrett's been up and down, as you'd expect from a young player.
Mostly down though.
Mostly down, yeah, but he has a few ups. I'll give him that. He's had a few ups. Mitchell Robinson, I'm up a little bit up and down with him as well. I wish he'd have a little bit more of an offensive game, so he'll be more all-arounded. But his defense and rebounding is good enough for at least the Knicks to keep him. But where do you think the Knicks should go after, their massive overhaul of power forwards are done?
I mean, what they should really do is just look at the draft, next year's draft. I don't really think there's much you can do. Maybe with the players they still have that are veterans, maybe you can look to trade them, get their value up, just like OKC did with Chris Paul. I think Julius Randle right now is showing that he's a very capable player. He's averaging 21, 10.5 rebounds, and 7 assists for a big guy. That's very nice stats. And just, I guess, keep developing your young guys. Kevin Knox hasn't really been that good. RJ Barrett, even though you see him averaging 17 points, he is averaging 37% from the field and 24% from the three-pointer. So that's not really good, not what you want. And he does, he does have 7 rebounds and 3.5 assists, but you kind of expect better percentages from him. And if I was the Knicks, I'd just wait for Obi Toppin to be back. See if that maybe hinders Julius Randle's value. I think you should be looking at that since you have him in fantasy. I think that's a big no-no if Obi comes back. So, yeah, it's just what I noticed right now. But yeah, they don't have Obi Toppin. He's injured right now.
Yeah, I think what I think the Knicks should do is they should just get rid of James Dolan. Just get rid of him. Because
he's the owner.
Because I wish he'd step down.
Resign. Yeah.
I wish he'd step down because the Knicks have been in this who do we draft situation for years now. For many years now, they've been in mediocrity now. And, it's sad because the Knicks, they're such a storied franchise. I hate talking about the Knicks and how they should be in the lottery almost every year. How they can't sign a free agent, and at least if James Dolan steps down, if you truly cared about the Knicks and not about money, he should step down. Because I think he's one of the reasons that KD and Kyrie didn't want to go there, personally.
What do you mean they don't sign free agents? They got Austin Rivers and Nerlens Noel.
Oh my god. Yeah, you know what I mean. You definitely.
It's fun looking at him as a meme, but if I was a New York Knicks fan, I'd definitely be depressed and I'd be looking for better times because they've been in mediocrity for a long time. And I also mean this because Stephen A. Smith, I know he's a good old Knicks fan, so I'm hoping he at least gets some good days ahead of him.
I respect him for at least, representing the New York Knicks, but I wouldn't be surprised if he jumped ship to Brooklyn either.
That's what Kellerman did. I think he was also a Knicks fan, but then he just gave up on them.
Yeah, unfortunate. I guess next up we have the OKC Thunder. They are currently 2-3. As you all know, they've been, they're the team known as, hey, we got millions of first-round picks now, so we're going to own the entire first round for the next 5 years. I personally think that's a great strategy when you're rebuilding. I think the value they got for Chris Paul is really good. First round picks, they got a couple players back as well. I like that. I think I don't know how Al Horford's been, but I think he's been solid, hasn't he? He's been okay this season.
Almost 11 points, 7.5 rebounds, and 3.5 assists.
Do you know the efficiency? Because I do not know the efficiency.
Averaging 47% from the field, 38% three-pointer. I mean, for Al, that's what you'd expect, I guess.
You know what? I'll take it. For Al Horford, I'll take it. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he's going to be the leader of the team now. I love Lou Dort. I love that he's going to be a 3-and-D guy. Although he struggled with the 3 at the bubble at times, I think he'll pick it up definitely this season. I think he's an exceptionally hard worker for this team. And if there's one player I'm really excited for, is Darius Baisley. I think he's been kind of okay. He's been solid for them. I know he had an excellent game last game. and we'll only see what OKC do from there. I think they'll be one of those teams, they got a lot of young players, they're going to be a great transition team, and they're going to try and win a good amount of games here and there, because I think what Chris Paul embedded in Shai is that winning mentality, knowing how he helped them reach the playoffs as well. So, do you see Shai being a dark horse for being an all-star this season, or do you not, because of OKC's potential in being one of the bottom teams in the league?
I think Chris Paul not being there kind of helps his chances, but I still don't think he's going to make it, at least looking at his stats right now. For him being a player, like almost the only player who can create his own shot and score, he's only averaging 18.8 points per game, which I think is kind of similar to what he did last year. And I mean, you'd kind of want to expect him to have more for a guy who's, has basically his own team. He averaged 19 points last year. Right now he's averaging 18.8 with the absence of Chris Paul. So he definitely has to step it up. Right now at least I haven't seen it. I've seen more of George Hill and Darius Baisley than I have of Shai. But they definitely have some young players that they can keep developing, and I think this is going to be a down year for them. They just gotta, bite their teeth and get through it. But because, there's nothing you can do about it. You have to look at the future. The future is very bright. Even players like Isaiah Roby, who played great in Al Horford's absence. He's a young guy. He's a center. Lou Dort, already mentioned Darius Baisley. And I guess this year you should look to get George Hill's and Al Horford's value up so you can trade them and get even more picks.
More picks. Hey, that's a solid solution, yeah. Next up, we have the Orlando Magic. They're currently 4-2. I think the thing with Orlando, they always get a solid start, excellent start, but then they just, for some reason, they just go down to where they normally are at, 8th seed, and they get bounced around in the first round. It's been like that for quite a few years now.
Yeah, I agree on you on that completely.
Yeah, like, for some reason, I don't like it when people jump the gun way too early and say, oh, they're going to reach the playoffs, or how are they this good suddenly, like, oh, they will be this and that. I'm always just saying, just wait, There's a reason their power rankings before the season start, It's an 72 game season now. So, yeah, they're 4-2. Vucevic has, been playing solid. Markelle Fultz, one of the most improved player candidates, definitely. I really wanted to see Markelle Fultz do what he's doing this year, because I know he's always had it in him. If you're a number one pick for a reason, and although you may start slow, very slow, with the jump shot issues, and his jumper still doesn't look pretty, he's solid. He's a freak athlete, and he can put the ball in the basket right now. I know he's averaging solid numbers right now as well. For the next offseason, I've said it countless times, they should blow it up. Maybe let Markelle Fultz be the focal point, get picks, and rebuild, because they're in the worst situation in my opinion. They're not good enough for a lottery team, but they're not good enough to contend.
Yeah, do you know who their top scorer is?
Who?
Terrence Ross, coming off the bench. So that's really nice.
Damn, how much is he averaging?
22.
Damn.
He's been really solid right now, but I definitely don't think he's going to keep this up. They're starting Dwayne Bacon in the absence of Jonathan Isaac, and I still wouldn't be surprised if they still made the 8th seed without Jonathan Isaac. I think even if they didn't have their whole team, they'd probably be a mediocre team, still being the 8th seed. I think that's what I kind of resemble in Orlando. That's what I think. That's the first thing I think of when you say the word Orlando Magic. So
yeah, definitely.
I don't know. As you said, they're kind of mediocre. They should blow it up. Also, they have Cole Anthony, who's been a solid backup point guard for them. So I think that pick worked out well, because he can definitely transition to a sixth man, like a Lou Williams type of player. So he's been okay.
Yeah. Next up, we have the Philadelphia 76ers, as they are the 1 seed with a 5-1 record. Seth Curry has been proving so far to be an excellent trade for them. It's exactly what you can see Philly has been missing, in that they need 3-point shooters. I have not watched Danny Green, but I've seen that Ben Simmons, he's been solid, and I haven't seen much of Joel Embiid. I think he was injured, if I'm correct, for a little while. but I may be wrong, and he's still averaging amazing numbers as he should, as they are the 1 seed. But with Seth Curry, with Danny Green, with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, and Doc Rivers, who is their new coach as well, where do you see Philly now? Because so far they've had an excellent start, as they're 5-1. They're on a 3-game winning streak right now. It won't increase, of course, but do you see Philly as a dark horse 3 seed right now?
Surely. I can surely see them, and I think should give props to Daryl Morey, who constructed a team completely exactly what you needed to do with adding Seth Curry and Danny Green. You definitely need shooters for that kind of team that has Ben Simmons and Joel. And you got him, and at least for Seth, he's been playing extraordinary. He's averaging 16 points per game. And players like Shake Milton, who's coming off the bench, also averaging 12 points. Maybe that team isn't the deepest team in the league, but for the players they have right now, they're pretty solid. If I was Philadelphia, I'd still be looking to maybe add a player or two in the trade deadline to make the bench a little bit more stronger. Other than that, they've been a nice team, and I can definitely see them, for once now, being a very good playoff team and scary for other teams to face, if they're fully healthy, that is.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad. I think we saw a little glimpse of what they could become is after Joel Embiid got swept. He sounded like he was very pissed, very angry. He said, "This is not a rivalry. We got swept by them," and stuff like that. I think that lit a little fire under him finally, I guess, because there's been a lot of talks about him. He has all the talent in the world, but sometimes he just doesn't, he just doesn't care sometimes. But yeah, not going to take anything away from them so far. They're 5-1. Joel Embiid will most likely be amazing this season. So will Ben Simmons, and their role players will step it up as they have a former NBA champion in Danny Green to also give them a little mentorship as well afterwards. Next up, we have the Phoenix Suns. They are the number 1 team in the Western Conference. They are 5-1. Trading for Chris Paul and getting Jay Crowder proves to be valuable. Jay Crowder's been up and down, and Chris Paul has been up and down. Although Chris Paul gets his assist numbers, his points per game has been a little bit, I think he's averaging around 11 points, 12 assists. That's solid. But for Chris Paul, I expected a little bit more points from him, but I'm not taking anything away from them. Devin Booker, his offensive load is lower, but that's what you get when you're winning. I guess he's finally happy he'll be on a winning culture now. And DeAndre Ayton, don't even get me started on him, and now he's solid. And I can go on and on about how Phoenix has been amazing this season, how they've got Cameron Payne. I've been watching a little bit of him. He's been great. And Mikal Bridges, he's an absolute god for some reason now, averaging 16 points on great efficiency as well, getting you the elite defense as well, which what you expected from him.
I think the best stat for him is that for the whole season right now, he has 0 turnovers. I'm looking at the assist to turnover ratio, and it says infinite because he hasn't had a turnover this year. And for a player like a 3-and-D player, if your only role on offense is to shoot 3-pointers and you don't create any turnovers, I think that's a really, really valuable player. And I think Mikal Bridges is going to be a really valuable piece moving forward for them. And I could definitely see him being, at some point, even an all-star if he continues to play he has.
I mean, yeah. I just want to add to that. Their defense has been absolutely amazing as well. I'm looking at, their opponent points per game right now is 98.7. That's the only team in the league that's under 100 points conceded by an opponent. And their that's really good. And their point differential is plus 9.3, which is just under the Los Angeles Lakers. So they're second in plus point differential, and they're one of the best teams in opponents' points per game. So far, at least.
Yeah, if you looked at the points per game for everybody, you'd probably think this is a disappointing start. Devin Booker only averaging 28 points on 6 turnovers per game. I don't really think it's that good of a start to a year of him. I know he has a less of a role on offense right now because of Chris Paul. Or no, I can't say less of a role. I guess less of a burden. But still, 20.5 points, that's not really good. And Chris Paul, 13.2 points. You definitely want to see that getting picked up. DeAndre Ayton as well. Even though he's averaging a double-double, only 12 points per game. you kind of want to see a little bit more from him as well. But a player like Cameron Johnson averaging 13.5 out the bench, I guess the bench is the reason why they're doing so good, because they have a lot of players who can come in and provide instantly.
Yeah, definitely. I expected Phoenix to reach the playoffs, and I think they definitely will, at least in this rate. I think they'll at least be the 7th seed if everything goes wrong. But, yeah, positive times are ahead in Phoenix, definitely. Next up, we have the Portland Trailblazers. I think they had an excellent offseason, getting Robert Covington and Derrick Jones Jr., excellent two-way players to maybe help with their somewhat of a weak wing defense, because they have CJ, Dame, and, that's not going to cut it on the defensive side. So I'm glad they got solid wing defenders to maybe go on the help side with, as I said, Rocco and Derrick Jones. They're 3-2. CJ McCollum is an absolute baller. Damian Lillard, you know what you're going to get from Damian Lillard. And, the thing is, on paper, this team is absolutely amazing. On paper. They have Rodney Hood. They have Gary Trent Jr., who's been amazing. CJ, Dame. They even got Canner back. With excellent role players in, Derrick Jones Jr. and Rocco. I would not, to be honest, I understand why Charles Barkley bet $100K on this team on paper, right? On paper. But will they win the finals? I don't think so, because of the Lakers. But if people said Portland will win the championship, it's not like I'll say, that's absolutely insane take. I'll say, I understand. I understand why you think that way.
Yeah, as you said, on paper the team looks good, but in my opinion they have been a little bit disappointing if you disregard CJ.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the stats right now. Jusuf Nurkic is averaging less points than Enes Kanter right now. For a guy that we saw in the bubble, coming off of the broken leg injury, just absolutely tearing everybody, to now averaging less points than his backup. A little bit disappointing for him. I know he can definitely pick up the slack, but right now, I kind of want to see more. As well, Robert Covington averaging only 6 points, shooting absolutely abysmal percentages. We know he's definitely had he definitely needs a little bit of time to adjust to new teams. We saw that from Timberwolves, we saw that in Houston, so I'm hoping the same happens with Portland. But they do have a nice bench with Gary Trent lighting up in this one of those games. They also have Rodney Hood, who hasn't been that good right now. But Derrick Jones, he's been starting. I didn't think he was going to start, but he's starting right now, and he's been okay, I would say. But they definitely need to pick up their slack. Even though the record is 3-2, which isn't that bad, I'd kind of want to see a little bit more from this team.
Yeah, I think so. But, it's only been a few games. I think over time, Robert Covington will pick it up afterwards. But
Surely.
Sure, it has to be. It's Robert Covington. He's kind of like a plus on any team. He's a positive asset on any team he'll go to. That's for sure. Next up, we have the Sacramento Kings. They are 500 at 3-3. I don't think they're gonna. Personally, I do not think they're gonna reach the playoffs. They may qualify for the play-in tournament, but how everything goes so far, I don't think so. Hassan Whiteside, their new signing, hasn't done much. De'Aaron Fox is doing De'Aaron Fox things, of course. Buddy Hield, I think he's been okay. But if there's somebody who I'm really surprised with, is Tyrese Haliburton. I expected Tyrese Haliburton to be solid, but damn, he's averaging I think around 10 and 5. I think around that mark.
Yeah,
coming off the bench. I mean, for a rookie season, and this, in my opinion, one of the biggest steals in the draft. That's absolutely amazing, knowing that he's in such a guard-heavy lineup with Buddy Hield and De'Aaron Fox, and also Rashawn Holmes. I think he's been excellent for them as well. The potential's there for Sacramento. The potential's definitely there, but they still have a few weaknesses they need to improve on. Their bench is still a little bit, rusty.
Yeah, I think they're definitely not as fun to watch as that team in 2018.
Yeah, we got to see the resurgence of. We got to see De'Aaron Fox take that big step that year.
Yeah, I mean, Hassan Whiteside, man, he got 0 minutes last time. He did absolutely nothing Richaun Holmes completely outplays him. The player I've been most disappointed with is probably Marvin Bagley. I don't really know it just because there's so many other players who can play on offense, but this dude is averaging less than 12 points. I kind of wanted to see a little bit more from him, but it's only been 6 games now. I can definitely see him picking it up. But Sacramento, they've been up and down. I mean, what are the teams they have beat and what are the teams they have lost to? They lost twice to Houston, once to Phoenix, but they beat Denver in overtime. They beat Denver another game against Denver. So that's 2 wins against Denver and Phoenix. So I'd say they did have a tough start to the season, but right now they're faring up pretty decently. But yeah, I still have some teams ahead of Sacramento making the play-in tournament. But I guess time will tell. Right now, it's too early for me to judge.
Yeah, same here. Next up, we have the San Antonio Spurs. I think they're going to become a candidate as one of my favorite teams to watch this season. Although they're 2-3, they may not win as many games. They're young. I've got to say, I love their young core. I love Keldon Johnson. I knew he was going to become a great player. He's averaging, I think, around 15 points. And, that's solid when you see all that upside people have been talking to you about. Lonnie Walker, I don't know much about him, but I know he has tremendous upside as well. To go along with DeMar DeRozan as well. I think they have a lot of guards that are really good and are exciting to watch because, DeMar DeRozan, I remember he he absolutely posterized Montrezl Harrell that one game. After he got blocked on the other side as well.
Sad times for Montrezl.
I know, but I've seen that Spurs, Jakob Poeltl and Eubanks are not as good as what the Spurs hope them to be. But right now, I don't think there's much to talk about the Spurs other than their young core is absolutely amazing. I love their young core. With Lonnie Walker and Keldon Johnson, I think they're the future for the team at the moment. I'm really high on Keldon Johnson right now because he can shoot. He can shoot 3. He's athletic, and I think he'll do whatever he needs on defense as well. I think it's passable defense at least.
Yeah, I mean, for San Antonio, their motto has always been build through the draft, because the last time they did a trade in season was a long time ago. I'd guess it was 2013. It was a really long time ago. But yeah, at least that's what I heard somewhere. But yeah, as you said, a lot of good guards. Even now, Derek White coming back, and he had a solid return. He got even 2 blocks in that game, so that's cool. But I don't know. I think San Antonio isn't really there to make any playoffs. I think this is more of a development year. DeJounte Murray has been absolutely tearing it. 17, 8, and 6 with 1 steal per game. So you definitely see him as the starting point guard of San Antonio for a while. And then comes the question, what does their starting lineup look like in perhaps 2 years? Do you have Keldon Johnson at the 2? Do you have Lonnie Walker at the 2? If you have one of them at the 2, you probably have the other at the 3. But then, where do you have Derek White? Because he was an amazing player last year and even started. And I think he's probably better than Lonnie or Keldon. But we just haven't seen as much of him yet to, make that discussion yet.
I think knowing that San Antonio, they won't reach the playoffs, I think maybe Derek White is the expendable one here, knowing that he's on the older side compared to the others.
He's still 24? He's not that old.
Yeah, but maybe since they may not reach since they may not reach the playoffs, and they're okay, we'll get as much value for him as we can, and we can build around the younger aspect of things, the younger players. Maybe he's expendable, but I don't know. But if they should keep Derek White, I wouldn't be mad either. He's absolutely a solid player, and if people told me about Derek White, the first thing that would come to my head is that posterizer he had on Paul Millsap in the playoffs 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. Yeah. 3 years ago. Absolutely posterized him. So yeah, I like Derek White. He's a solid player, and it'll only be good times for him at least. Next up, we have the Toronto Raptors. I don't know what's going on in Toronto. They're 1-4. They replaced Serge Ibaka and Marc Gasol with Alex Len and Aaron Baines. They're missing Ibaka right now. I wish they kept Ibaka because I think he'll help he'd help them a lot more, at least compared to what Aaron Baines and Alex Len did combined, in my opinion. He can shoot the 3-ball, he can dunk amazing, he's what saved Toronto during the playoffs, in my opinion, when Siakam wasn't there. Other than that, Fred VanVleet, I know he's been up and down. I know Siakam's been up and down as well. I think Siakam may be a little bit low on confidence right now, but I hope he bounces back. But that's what happens when, you don't perform in the playoffs, You have to be solid. Where do you see Toronto right now? Because they had a really rocky start as they're 1-4, and it doesn't look like they improved. It looks like they got worse because they lost Ibaka.
They did get worse, and I think we're only seeing the consequences of what happened in the playoffs with Pascal Siakam. Only averaging 16 points on terrible efficiency. He got benched on that Knicks game because of, disciplinary issues? So that's very worrying if you ask me. But I think Jaylen Brown is the reason why Pascal Siakam is like this right now. He got absolutely killed in the playoffs. They lost Ibaka, as you said, and Marc Gasol. But I think that made room for Chris Boucher to at least make a role for this team. He's now averaging 13.5 points, as well as 2 blocks for that team. So he's carved out a really nice role for them. I think they should be looking to maybe start him instead of Aaron Baines. Or even if he's off the bench, he's still a very good piece. Do you see them making the playoffs? I think this should be an easy answer.
I'm not 100%. I think they could. They could, but right now...
Are they better than Orlando?
At the moment, I don't know. They probably are better than Orlando.
Because if they're better than Orlando, they're at least the 7th seed because Orlando's
at least the 7th seed,
because
I'm not 100% sure because Kyle Lowry's aging, and when they had Kawhi, that's when everything clicked. They had that star, but right now I don't think they do necessarily. They just have good players, but it just hasn't worked out yet.
Yeah, I think even last year they still had a chance. They were the 2nd seed and they were playing out of their minds. Everyone was, improving. Fred had a good year. Pascal had a good year. But now, almost every of the good players left. They re-signed Fred, which was good, but we see no direction for them right now.
I remember prior to the bubble when there were no fans, people were talking about how maybe certain teams, it was like this. Certain teams feed off the crowd, and certain teams do not need to feed off the crowd. I think this is a huge, sight here to see that Toronto's maybe a team that needs a crowd to get going, because they don't have that guy like Kawhi who can, for example, kill the offense for the opposing team or shut down the crowd from the when they're on an away game, I
think there's also one other reason though.
How come?
They're not really Toronto anymore. They're Tampa Bay.
Jesus, they completely forgot they switched up. They're now
even if they did have fans, they're not the Toronto fans, because we know the Toronto fans are crazy. It's very hard winning in Toronto, but Tampa Bay, I don't know.
I don't know. Isn't that another? I think that's another Florida team. So I think now there's 2 or 3 Florida teams now.
It's good for Florida fans if they could ever go to the game.
Hey, I wish they moved to Seattle personally. I'd wish they moved to Seattle.
Adam Silver wasn't in denial when he was asked the question of expansion. In the past, it was no, but now it was maybe not yet, but we're kind of moving towards it. So
okay, so not necessarily okay, let's say an expansion doesn't happen, right? Which team do you think deserves to move to Seattle?
Out of the place where they're at right now?
Yeah.
I'd probably say the Clippers, just because you already have one Los Angeles team, but as we know, they're going to go to Inglewood. They're going to have their own arena, so I don't know. I think every city deserves their team, but if you add 2 more teams, I think definitely you should bring a team back to Seattle. But the other question is, who do you bring the other team to? There have been talks of Las Vegas, or I don't even know. If that ever happens, it's going to be crazy because all of the player protections and in expansion drafts you can You can pick other players, other teams as players, which is really crazy. And I hope I get to see it in my lifetime. But yeah, that would be completely crazy if that happened.
Do you think there'll be 1 through 9, or do you think those should be 1 through 8?
What do you mean, playoffs?
Yeah, playoffs, because they add one extra probably for each conference.
9 teams, that wouldn't necessarily work though. I think they'd still keep the 8, or have like bye rounds. That means like you don't play the first round if you're a high seed. Yeah, I think they'd keep the eight teams, but it's definitely going to be more interesting seeing how they schedule the games, because it's already a very long season. If you had 2 more teams, what does that make? More than 82 games? That would be crazy.
That would be a lot of games. But do you think some players will be opposed of it?
I think so. I think more players have been wanting less regular season games, and I think this is a perfect experiment to see what the players think. Even though it's a shortened season and we have more back-to-backs, I think what the players really want is a longer season and less games, so they have more rest, because all the travel, all the everything, it's been really crazy for them, as I've heard.
Yeah, I think this will be a long season, especially for the players. Although it's a shortened season, there's more back-to-backs, so it'll take a toll on them, definitely. Next up, we have the Utah Jazz. They are currently 3-2. I saw that Shaq and Rudy Gobert had a big beef today about how Shaq said, look kids, you can get $200 million and average 11 points, while Rudy Gobert was roasting Shaq for being fat and stuff like that. But it was a funny exchange.
Did that happen live on air or something?
No, it happened on Twitter.
Oh, nice.
Of course it happened on. Of course, everything happens on Twitter. But back to Utah. They're 3-2. I have no idea how. I've not been paying attention to Utah. Other than that, they're 3-2. Donovan Mitchell's probably doing good. Rudy Gobert averaging 11, but you're not expecting points from him. You're expecting defense.
He's actually averaging 16 as I look. Maybe that game when Shaq said something.
Yeah, he said something about something with 11. I haven't paid attention, but yeah. I think personally Utah was in a lose-lose situation with Gobert's contract. Like, he'd either walk, oh, you should have offered him money, or you give him that money, oh, you overpaid him for somebody his caliber.
Yeah.
Do you think Utah could have come up with some sort of compromise and maybe gone in the middle?
I think they found a compromise. They didn't give him a super max, but they gave him a regular max contract, which is still if you look at it.
He's the most expensive, he's the highest paid center in NBA history right now.
He had the 3rd largest contract in NBA history right now, I think. That's what I read a while ago.
And I think, if I'm correct, he's the most among centers.
Yeah. I mean, for a small market team like Utah, there is nothing else you can do. You either let him walk and then you work without a center, or you give him a max contract and then you're completely bummed out for the rest of the while he's there. But at least now you have Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. You're gonna get constant playoff runs. Maybe this year they're gonna get a little bit more lucky since Bojan Bogdanovic is here, even though he hasn't been really playing well. But a player who has been playing well is Mike Conley. He's been really surprising. He got a triple-double recently. He's the team's top scorer with 21.4. Even Donovan Mitchell isn't averaging 20 points. He's averaging 19.8. But Mike Conley, and I was hoping that after last year's terrible run that he would probably, blend in more with the system, and he definitely has. So I'm very happy for Mike Conley.
Yeah, I think people forget about Mike Conley when he was absolutely excellent when he was with the Memphis team. The grit and grind Memphis team we all miss. I 100% miss Tony Allen, but Mike Conley, he's always been a quote-unquote underrated player, especially when he was in Memphis. And I'm glad we're seeing somewhat of a resurgence of him early in the season. It may change, but I'm glad we at least see some positive aspects of him. Coming back, playing absolutely amazing. Where do I see Utah? I don't know. Maybe I think they could be a 6 seed, 5 seed maybe, because of what you get from Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. Bojan Bogdanovic, he'll be back. I know he'll play well again afterwards, because when you're a shooter in that bubble environment, you're gonna, for some, people have been saying you hit more shots most likely. And the thing is, what I think is with the bubble scenario is that it's going to be more of like a scrimmage. It's more of like a scrimmage than an actual game. That's what I think. So I think that's why players are more comfortable, shooting now. Because we even saw Ben Simmons hitting a three.
Yeah, but actually some stadiums do have fans, so at least that's nice to see. I know Houston has fans, so that's cool, and a couple different other teams have fans, so that kind of makes it a little bit more, I guess, of like a game. And I've heard also like Miami or somebody, they're letting the families of players play. I mean, not play, but come to games. So I think that's cool, and it kind of gives you a little bit of that game time action, not the scrimmages you've been talking about.
Yeah, I understand that. But I think, like, how many fans are there? Like, a couple hundred, or is it like 50 fans?
For the family thing, it's probably like close to 100. For other teams, I think the games that I saw for Houston, they did have fans like spread around in the lower seats. Probably looked like not more than, what would I say, like not more than 500, but still, fans is fans, and I think if you see any type of fans, you'll at least get a little bit of more energy to play the game. So that's cool.
At least I'm glad they got on. At least a good amount of people get to come to the games at least.
Yeah, but not every team gets to do that, and it's part of like America, like the states, which state you're in. If other states are doing bad, it's very tough. But if you have the chance to have fans, it definitely helps the players, in my opinion.
100%. Last but not least, we have the Washington Wizards. They're the bottom of the entire NBA. They are 1-5. They got their first win last game, as I'm seeing here. I'm really confused with Washington. I did not expect Washington to have a worse start than Detroit, Chicago, or Charlotte. I did not expect that. Russell Westbrook's been getting his points, and Bradley Beal's been getting his. I don't see anything else. I know Thomas Bryant is not good at defense, and I love Danny Avdija. I know he's going to be a great player, and but I don't think his defense is there either. So I think like Washington, they haven't been. Man, it's sad to see them at the bottom because on paper they're better than teams in Chicago and Charlotte and Detroit, and the Knicks as well.
Yeah, that's true. I do like the starting lineup that they have. That's, I guess, the only plus, that they're playing both the super experienced guys like Westbrook and Beal, as well as players like Avdija and Hachimura. I think their starting lineup is actually not that bad, but there have been players who have been very, very bad. If you look at a player like Davis Bertans, he had one good game. Other than that, his shooting percentages have been absolutely awful. Robin Lopez hasn't really been a good center for them. What else? I mean, I guess they've been losing close games. I know they had this one game against Atlanta where Bradley Beal fumbled the ball. They couldn't get a shot off and they lost. But I guess on the bright side, you could look to Bradley Beal's averaging 31 points. Russell Westbrook is averaging a triple-double, and a quite obvious triple-double, averaging 20 points, 13 rebounds, and 12 assists. Those are crazy stats. But I mean, it's the start of the year, but still, those are crazy stats.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. I guess that's it. I suppose we're done now. We've talked about all 30 teams. Let us know what you think. If we maybe missed on anything, if maybe you'd say anything different. But we've said our part. See ya.
Yeah, see you soon.